Now, the episode consists of following Alex and Louie around separately and seeing how they interact with their fares, and of course, Louie is a dick who tries to scam people out of money, and Alex is just a nice guy. Also, Louie gets his hack license taken from him by an inspector, but it isn't his license, it's Tony's. Louie was driving under Tony's license, so I'm curious what's going to happen with Tony after this. Welcome back to another episode of The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking the next episode of Taxi. Now, if you're enjoying these episodes, or if you're just a fan of Taxi and you enjoy consuming content about it, please consider subscribing and or following. Like the episodes and comment or email your questions and comments, suggestions, all that stuff to the email below. Please also consider becoming a patron on our Patreon site at patreon.com/TheRankPodcast. Now, today we're ranking the 8th episode of the 2nd season of Taxi, titled The Great Race, which was written by Glenn Gordon Caron and directed by James Burrows. Shocking. Now, the series is 45 years old, so spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it in the past 45 years, I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to talk about it. All right, I guess for those of you who are new to this, the whole premise here is that we're trying to figure out what is the best sitcom of all time, so I'm going episode by episode and individually ranking each episode, and then we average up the scores of all the episodes, and that gives us the average ranking for the series. This one we're doing Taxi, so let's find out how it does. We'll start off our show with the Potent Notables.
Potent Notables.
So this 30th episode of Taxi was released on Tuesday, November 9th, 1979. It was 13th for the week at 23, rating of 23, so it dropped a bit from last week. It was actually tied with the 8:30 time slot on ABC, which was Angie, and for the first time in a while, it was beat by Happy Days, which had a 23.4, so I mean, it was all close, but I was surprised to see that it got beat by Happy Days, and of course, Three's Company also did better, which it always does, with a 24.8, although, again, not that big of a gap, like it usually is. Actually, it's a fairly weak showing for the ABC Tuesday lineup, as Three's Company was only 8th. CBS had 6 of the top 7 slots, with 60 Minutes taking number 1 this week with a 31.1, and ABC having the only show that wasn't on CBS in the top 7. Its breakout hit, 8 is Enough, which got 2nd. All right, so that's enough of the ratings. Let's go on to the other Potent Notables here. There's 2 more. Now, there's a blind passenger that asks Louie to drive him to 2120 9th Avenue in Brooklyn. Now, there is no such address in the borough of Brooklyn. The lowest number address on 9th Avenue is 3724. So 2120 9th Avenue would be in the middle of Greenwood Cemetery. So, maybe he had a death wish. I don't know. So the writer of this episode, Glenn Gordon Caron, would later go on to create the show Moonlighting and the show Medium, and this was the only episode of Taxi that he ever wrote. Interestingly, I found an interview with him, and he talks about doing Picture Perfect, which was Jennifer Aniston's first starring vehicle, which he did because his 12-year-old daughter was thrilled, or at least partly because of that anyway. He also did the movie Clean and Sober, which he was intensely proud of. He talked about that one a lot, but that's what actually brought it back around to Taxi, because he rewrote Clean and Sober a little bit. He did some rewriting, and he was talking about rewriting being something that writers are either okay with or they don't like, but it's usually based on how you came up, and his first show was actually Taxi. So he talked about how Taxi was a James L. Brooks show, and that he would often rewrite what others had written and not take credit. So according to Glenn here, James's attitude was that because he was the head honcho and he hired the writers, if the episode didn't come out right, then it was his responsibility to fix it. So Glenn here took that attitude as his own, seemingly emulating James L. Brooks. Quote, "It's so much easier to edit, reimagine, to look with some distance at someone else's work and say, okay, I know how to fix this, than it is to create from scratch." End quote. I just thought that was pretty interesting. So those are the Potent Notables. Let's go to the episode overview. We start this episode with a little jaunty ditty. It's pretty upbeat, which leads directly into Louie yelling at everyone. Kind of incongruous. He's yelling at them about not getting enough bookings and that he's getting chewed out over it. Now, this starts the plot of the episodes pretty quickly. That being that Alex and Louie are going to go head to head and see who can get the most bookings. It does take a while to convince Alex to do it, and it was funny that Bobby essentially volunteered Alex to take up the cause of all the drivers against Louie, but Alex doesn't want to at first. Apparently, being competitive has been a problem for him in the past, which I thought that was goofy. That it gets to him too aggressive or something. Anyway, he sure didn't seem to be too aggressive throughout the episode, though. I mean, if competitiveness was really a problem for him, it wasn't displayed here. I mean, there was that one moment with the nuns, but that was, I mean, objectively frustrating. Like, I would have been frustrated by that too. Anyway, the garage is all betting on Alex, and Louie is taking everyone's bets, which means that if he loses, he's going to be out a ton of money. I mean, if he wins, he gains a lot too, so I see the risk reward here, but still, it's a lot of freaking money. And then he ups the ante that he'd give Elaine $500 if Alex wins, but she has to go on a date with him if Louie wins. Now, I don't really understand the point of this from Louie's perspective, because what's he hoping will happen from here? She can just get a free dinner and be disinterested and go home. What's he gained? Also, what about Rhea Perlman? I don't remember her character name anymore, but she and him were great. I want her to come back. I don't like the implication that he may be willing to cheat on her, which does seem like Louie, but I still don't like it. Now, the episode consists of following Alex and Louie around separately and seeing how they interact with their fares. And of course, Louie is a dick who tries to scam people out of money, and Alex is just a nice guy. Also, Louie gets his hack license taken from him by an inspector, but it isn't his license, it's Tony's. Louie was driving under Tony's license, so I'm curious what's going to happen with Tony after this. He also doesn't stop driving, obviously. He just pulls out Bobby's hack license and starts driving under that one. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention how he berates this inspector as well. He asks for the inspector's ID, and when the inspector gives him his wallet, Louie sees pictures of the guy's family and says that it reminds him of a chimp act he once saw. I mean, it's good stuff, and they do a callback to that joke even just like a little bit later in this same conversation, but it hits, it works. So Alex ends up getting a really lucky fare, a woman who's driving all over the city, dropping off groceries to her friends. But even with this stroke of luck, when they head back to the garage and measure it up, Louie has $212 in bookings and Alex has $197. So Louie's won. But wait. Elaine sees Alex counting his tips, and she has a eureka moment that tips count as money brought in. Of course, Louie disagrees, but this does lead to a funny bit where Alex has made a ton of money in tips, and Louie has made 80 cents, cementing how much more of a dick Louie is than the general population. Now, I'm curious your thoughts, though. Should the tips have been counted? Now, I submit that they should not have been. I'm not saying I want Louie to win, but come on, tips don't count as money brought in for the business. That's your money, not the business's, so I don't see how that would count. Anyway, let me know. Now, in the end, Latka settles it, saying that tips count. They abide by this ruling by Latka, and Louie is out a bunch of money, although we don't see him actually pay out anybody. So, curious if that'll come back later or not. I know in this era they didn't tend to like keep things going that much. In the streaming era, this would have continued. But anyway, I'll be curious. But let's see how it ranked.
A rank.
So the rank is where I rank the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. And then we have a laugh counter where I tally up the amount of times that the episode made me laugh out loud, and that gets added to the score. Now the first category is story, which I gave a 4.5. This was a simple, concise, and fun story. I wish we could see more stories like this on Taxi where things don't get overly convoluted or complicated. But hey, they've had 2 in a row now that really worked, so I'm starting to get my hopes up. Now let's go into acting, the next category, which I gave a 4.25. This was one of the better acted episodes. Of course, it was mostly Judd Hirsch and Danny DeVito, so that sort of makes sense. Everyone else was decent to good, but they weren't in it that much, so it definitely helps the score. So let's go to dialogue, which I gave a 4. This was a funny episode. I enjoyed the back and forth and the disparate interactions with customers between Alex and Louie. It was all good stuff. So let's go to episode coherence, which I gave a 4.25. The episode coherence is really good. It's a simple plot and easy to follow, so the characters are decent, but there's not too much depth. The only thing that I didn't really like was that the race in general just didn't seem to fit the argument. So basically, Louie says he's embarrassed by their low bookings and that he could do better. And essentially he does. Even if you say that Alex beat him, he still beat everyone else. So doesn't that prove his point? Also, was everyone else driving, or did they just sit in the garage for an entire 8-hour shift? It's not a huge deal, it's Taxi, but enough to keep it from being a 5. So let's go to the last category, which is character relatability, which I gave a 4. I can understand everyone's motivation here, but if I were Louie, I think I would have challenged like Nardo and Bobby combined to prove the point more effectively. It's really all about Louie and Alex here, and I related to them both, so job well done, I guess, but I would have liked to see it play it out a little bit differently. But maybe this is like the best version of things. Then there is the laugh counter. So the rankings here have actually been pretty high. And, you know, assuming I don't have a super low laugh counter, it means it's going to get a decent score, right? And I got a 13, which is not a ton, but it's pretty good. So there you have it. A grand total of 34, which makes it an I'd watch it again. And as for the series average, it went up to a 25.27, which moves it out of rank it and regret it up to mediocre. But hey, that's a good sign that things are going up. So thanks for listening and or watching. If you'd like to see a list of our episode and series rankings, you can do that on our website at therankedpodcast.com. Remember to subscribe, review, and comment. Please consider supporting us on our Patreon site at patreon.com/therankedpodcast, where you'll get access to all the archived episodes. And I'll leave you with this. Why did Hitler give this episode a bad review?
No! Somebody stop him!
Because he saw the title and was appalled there were no Aryans in it. I don't know. Doing a Hitler joke maybe is not the best idea, but it's called The Great Race. So
Please don't cancel us. Please.
I apologize, Internet. So this 29th episode of Taxi was released on, wait, is it 29th? I think that's right.
Many hours later.
So this 30th episode of Taxi was released on